My in-laws said I wasn't good enough for their daughter, so I left her, built my empire, and they begged me to reconsider every holiday. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for a while, I thought I had everything I'd ever wanted. I met Emma during my last year of college, and being with her felt like stepping into a dream I didn't deserve. She was beautiful, ambitious, and had this warmth that made even the darkest days feel lighter. When she smiled at me, it was like I'd finally been chosen for something good in life. But in the back of my mind, I always knew her world was different from mine end. Eventually, that difference would come crashing down on me the first time she brought me to meet her parents. I wore my best button-up shirt, one-eyed ironed 3 times to make sure there wasn't a wrinkle in sight. My hands were clammy as I gripped the steering wheel, telling myself this was just another dinner. But the moment I stepped into their perfectly polished home, I felt like I had walked onto a stage where everyone already knew their lines except me. Her dad shook my hand like it was a formality, his eyes scanning me up and down as if he were appraising the used car he'd never buy. Her mom's smile was tight, polite, but cold. I could feel their judgment before they even said a word. At the dinner table, they didn't ask me about my passions or how Emma and I met. Instead, they asked about my career plans, questions laced with sharp edges. "So, what do you do again?" her father asked, his tone dripping with skepticism. When I explained my entry-level job, he smirked. Well, maybe you'll figure things out eventually." Emma tried to laugh it off, but the silence after his comment burned hotter than any flame. I chewed my food slowly, pretending not to notice, but inside I felt like a child being told I'd never measure up. I thought it was just nerves, just a rough first impression, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this dinner was only the beginning of something much darker waiting for me. The second dinner wasn't much better actually, it was worse. By then, I had convinced myself the first time was just nerves, maybe me overthinking, but this time, their words cut sharper because they weren't hidden behind polite smiles anymore. Her mom poured wine into her glass, then looked at me and said, "Oh, I suppose beer is more your thing, isn't it?" The table chuckled softly, but it wasn't laughter, it was mockery. I sat there, forcing a smile, my jaw tight as I swallowed down the sting of humiliation. Emma nudged me under the table, whispering, "Don't take it personally, that's just how they are." But that was the problem. That's just how they are meant. This wasn't going to stop. Her dad leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms as he asked, "Do you think you'll ever make enough to support a family? I mean, Emma has a certain lifestyle, you know?" He said it as if I wasn't sitting right there, as if I were some underqualified applicant for the role of her boyfriend. I tried to answer with dignity, explaining how I was building my career step by step, but his smirk said it all. He wasn't listening. The food in my mouth turned to ash. The clinking of forks and knives was deafening, every scrape on the plate reminding me that I didn't belong here. Their house smelled faintly of cinnamon and polished wood. But all I could breathe in was the suffocating weight of not being enough. The worst part wasn't even their words. It was Emma's silence. She smiled awkwardly, changed the subject, and never once told them to stop. I stared at her, waiting for her to say, "That's enough, Dad. That's enough, Mom," but the words never came. Instead, I realized I was sitting at a table where love wasn't the main course, judgment was, and deep down, I knew if this was only the second dinner, I hadn't seen anything yet. It didn't take long before the digs at dinner became whispers behind closed doors. Emma started repeating things that didn't sound like her. They sounded like her parents' voices, echoing through her mouth. One night, she sighed and said, "My mom just wants me to be happy. She worries you won't be able to give me the kind of life I'm used to." I froze. It wasn't just her parents doubting me anymore, it was her starting to believe them. I tried to push back gently. "Emma, I may not have everything right now, but I'm working for it. Isn't that what matters?" She gave me a half smile, but her silence afterward said louder than any words that she wasn't sure. That silence crushed me more than the insults ever did. Meanwhile, her parents made their disapproval louder every time I saw them. Her father joked once, "Don't worry, Emma. If things don't work out, there's plenty of men out there with real futures." My blood boiled, but I swallowed it down because I didn't want to lose her. I told myself love could withstand this storm. But at night, lying awake in my small apartment, I wondered if I was already losing her one seed of doubt at a time. The pressure was relentless. If I stayed, I had to endure their constant judgment. If I left, I'd lose the woman I thought I wanted to spend my life with. It felt like being squeezed from every side, my chest tightening until I couldn't breathe. Every visit to her house became a test, and every word from her parents was another crack in the fragile foundation of our relationship. I kept asking myself one question, the one that haunted me in every quiet moment: was I fighting for her? Or was I just fighting not to be humiliated anymore? And then came the night when her parents finally dropped the mask completely. That night is burned into my memory like a scar. Emma had invited me over for dinner again, and against my better judgment, I went. I told myself maybe things would be different. Maybe her parents would finally see that I truly loved their daughter. But as soon as I walked into that dining room, I could feel the tension dripping from the air. Heavier than the smell of roasted lamb and expensive wine, we ate mostly in silence, the only sound being the clink of silverware against porcelain. Then her father set his fork down, leaned forward, and said, "Let's stop dancing around it. You're not good enough for our daughter." His words hit me like a punch to the chest. Emma's mother didn't even flinch. She just nodded, as if this was a conversation they'd rehearsed. I looked at Emma, waiting for her to speak, to defend me, to say, "Dad, that's not fair." But she didn't. Her eyes darted away, her lips pressed into a thin line, and in that moment her silence was louder than his accusation. I felt like the entire world had shrunk into that one suffocating dining room, and every breath I took was filled with shame. I tried to respond, my voice trembling. "I love your daughter. I may not be rich, but I'm building something. Doesn't that count for anything?" Her father smirked, shaking his head. "Love doesn't pay the bills. Love won't buy her the life she deserves." The way he said deserves made it clear, wasn't, and never would be, part of their definition of worthy. I clenched my fists under the table, nails digging into my palms, fighting the urge to explode. The room was warm, but my skin felt cold, like ice was running through my veins. For the first time, I realized that this wasn't just about them not liking me, this was about them actively trying to erase me from Emma's life. And the worst part, I could see in Emma's eyes that maybe, just maybe, they were succeeding. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my chest heavy with the weight of everything unsaid. The words "you're not good enough" replayed in my head like a cruel mantra. And Emma's silence echoed even louder than her father's voice. I realized I wasn't just fighting against her parents, I was fighting alone, and the woman I loved, the one who promised me forever, wasn't willing to stand beside me. The next morning, I packed my things from her apartment. Each shirt I folded felt like closing a chapter. Every book I slid into the box carried pieces of a future I thought we'd share. The sound of tape sealing the cardboard box was final. Like the slam of a door I couldn't reopen. Emma came home, just as I was carrying the last bag to my car. Her face went pale. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice breaking. I looked at her, my throat dry. "I can't do this anymore, Emma. I can't keep proving myself to a family that will never see me as enough. And I can't stay with someone who won't defend me." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't argue. She didn't say, "Stay, we'll figure this out." She just stood there, frozen, as if the choice had already been made for her. That silence again, that silence was my answer. I placed the last bag in the trunk, closed it with a heavy thud, and slid into the driver's seat. As I turned the key, my hands trembled. The engine roared to life, but my heart felt like it had stopped. I drove away without looking back, the city lights blurring through my tears. I told myself I was walking away to save my dignity, to save whatever was left of me. But as the road stretched endlessly before me, the emptiness inside grew heavier. For the first time in my life, I felt completely and utterly lost, and I had no idea just how much lower I was about to fall. The weeks after leaving, Emma felt like wandering through a fog I couldn't escape. My apartment was quiet to quiet. I'd wake up in the middle of the night reaching for a hand that wasn't there anymore, only to feel the cold sheets beside me. The silence that once gave me peace now gnawed at me, reminding me I'd lost not only her, but the dream I had built around her. I stopped eating properly. Some days it was just stale bread and coffee. Other days I didn't bother at all. Work became a blur. I'd sit at my desk staring at my computer screen while numbers and words swam together. My boss asked if I was okay, but I always muttered, Yeah, just tired, even though I was crumbling inside. At night, their words haunted me. Her father's sneer, "You're not good enough." Her mother's polite cruelty, "She deserves better." And Emma's silence, that was the loudest of all. I'd stand in front of the bathroom mirror, staring at my reflection, whispering, "Maybe they're right. Maybe I'll never be enough." The man in the glass looked hollow, like he was fading out of his own life. One evening, I sat in my car outside her apartment. Engine off, lights out. I wasn't there to talk to her. I didn't even want her to see me. I just sat there, staring at the window that used to be ours, wondering if she was inside laughing with someone else. The thought twisted my insides until I felt physically sick. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white, tears blurring the world beyond the windshield. That was my lowest point the moment. I felt like I had nothing left. No love, no respect, no future worth holding on to. And it was in that darkness that a dangerous thought crept in. If they were right about me, then why keep trying at all? That night in the car, staring at the window that used to feel like home, something inside me snapped. It wasn't an angry snap, not the kind that makes you lash out. It was quieter, heavier, like a switch flipping in the dark. I realized if I kept sitting here, drowning in their voices, I'd disappear completely, and maybe they'd win. I couldn't let that happen. The next morning, I dragged myself out of bed before sunrise. My apartment smelled like cold coffee and defeat, but I forced myself to shower, shave, and sit down at my desk. My old side project, a business idea I'd abandoned months ago, sat, waiting in a dusty folder on my laptop. With trembling hands, I opened it. For hours, I typed, planned, sketched. The apartment was silent, except for the clack of my keyboard and the hum of my ancient fan. But it felt like a heartbeat, like I was alive again. I started working double shifts at my job and spent every free hour building my side hustle. Weekends vanished into spreadsheets and prototypes. My friends thought I was isolating myself, but the truth was, I was building anything that couldn't be taken from me. I heard her father's voice in my head, "You'll never provide the life our daughter deserves," and every time it echoed. I worked harder. There were nights I fell asleep at my desk, my forehead on the keyboard, the glow of my laptop screen painting my face pale blue. My hands ached from typing. My eyes burned from exhaustion. But for the first time since leaving Emma, I felt a flicker of control, a pulse of power in my own chest. I didn't know if I'd succeed. I didn't know if I'd even survive this grind. But I knew one thing. I was done being their punchline. I was going to rewrite the story they'd written for me, even if it killed me trying. And somewhere, deep in that grind, the first signs of change began to flicker. The first spark of hope came on a rainy Tuesday night. I had been hunched over my laptop for hours, eyes burning from staring at numbers, when suddenly a notification pinged. My side project, something I had poured every ounce of pain and rage into, had just made its first sale. It wasn't much, barely enough to cover dinner, but I sat there staring at the screen with tears in my eyes. Someone out there believed in what I built. For the first time in months, I felt seen. I remember whispering to myself, "This is it. This is the start." My apartment smelled of stale pizza and coffee, the air heavy with exhaustion. But that little confirmation email lit up the room like fireworks. I leaned back in my chair, closed my eyes, and let myself smile a real smile. Not the forced kind I'd worn at her parents' table. From there, the momentum snowballed. A week later, I landed a client who doubled my income. The following month, another sale came in triple the size of the first. Every time I screenshotted it, printing the proof and taping it to the wall above my desk like trophies, the wall became my battlefield. Each paper a weapon against the voices that told me I wasn't enough. Friends started noticing too. One of them clapped me on the back and said, "Man, you look different. What's going on with you?" I shrugged, but inside I was screaming with pride. Even coworkers who once overlooked me began asking questions, curious about what I was building. And then came the whispers Emma had heard. A mutual friend mentioned she asked about me, her voice tinged with something that sounded a lot like regret. My heart raced when I heard it, not because I wanted her back, but because suddenly the power had shifted. For once, I wasn't the one begging to be enough, but I didn't know then that her regret would lead to a twist I never saw coming. It was late at night when my phone buzzed with a number I knew by heart. I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. Emma, for a moment, I thought about ignoring it, but curiosity won. I swiped, brought the phone to my ear, and heard her trembling voice. "Can we talk?" I sat in silence, the sound of rain tapping against my window. Part of me wanted to hang up, but another part, the part that still remembered the smell of her perfume on my hoodie, needed to hear her out. She started softly. "I made a mistake." Her words spilled out like water breaking through a dam. She admitted her parents had pushed her, convinced her I wasn't good enough. She confessed she had listened to them, thinking wealth and status mattered more than love. But now she was miserable. The man they'd wanted her to date, the better option, had turned out cold, controlling, and nothing like the fantasy her parents had promised. I clenched my jaw, my heart thudding. "So now you remember me? Now that he isn't who you thought he was?" There was silence on the line, then a whisper, "I miss you." "I miss us." The words I had once longed to hear now made my stomach twist. I could almost see her, sitting in her perfect house, realizing too late what she had thrown away. But I wasn't that broken, desperate man anymore. The grind, the long nights, the victories taped on my wall had rebuilt myself. I took a deep breath. "Emma, you made your choice. I wasn't good enough then, and I'm not your backup plan now." My voice cracked, but I meant every word. She had come crawling back, but this wasn't the end. Her family wasn't done with me yet, and neither was the fire they had lit inside me. Years blurred into one long grind, but every hour of lost sleep, every sacrifice, carved me into someone new. What began as a side hustle in a cramped apartment grew into something I never thought possible in Empire. My first office was barely bigger than a closet, but now I stood in a glass tower with my company's name etched on the wall in bold letters. The reflection staring back at me from those polished windows wasn't the hollow, broken man Emma's parents had dismissed. He was someone forged from fire. I remember the first time I signed a contract worth more than her father's yearly salary. My hands shook as the pen scratched across the paper, but when I looked up, I saw the respect in the client's eyes, the respect I'd been begging for at that dinner table years ago. This time, it wasn't handed to MIT, was earned. The symbols of success surrounded me, the sleek car I once dreamed of, the home filled with light and space instead of loneliness. The people who worked under me, believing in my vision. My days smelled of fresh coffee brewed in a penthouse office, my nights filled with the hum of city lights outside my window. And yet, beneath all of it, there was still that voice in my head, the echo of "You're not good enough." Only now, it didn't haunt me. It fueled me. I thought about Emma sometimes, about the nights I lay broken in bed, replaying her silence. And now, when I caught glimpses of myself in boardrooms, shaking hands with people of influence, I realized I had become the man they swore I'd never be. But life has a cruel way of circling back. Just when I thought I'd moved on completely, they came back into my story, her parents, carrying the weight of desperation. Knocking on doors I never thought they'd approach, and it started with the holidays. Years blurred into one long grind, but every hour of lost sleep, every sacrifice, carved me into someone new. What began as a side hustle in a cramped apartment grew into something I never thought possible in Empire. My first office was barely bigger than a closet, but now I stood in a glass tower with my company's name etched on the wall in bold letters. The reflection staring back at me from those polished windows wasn't the hollow, broken man Emma's parents had dismissed. He was someone forged from fire. I remember the first time I signed a contract worth more than her father's yearly salary. My hands shook as the pen scratched across the paper, but when I looked up, I saw the respect in the client's eyes, the respect I'd been begging for at that dinner table years ago. This time, it wasn't handed to MIT, was earned. The symbols of success surrounded me, the sleek car I once dreamed of, the home filled with light and space instead of loneliness. The people who worked under me, believing in my vision. My days smelled of fresh coffee brewed in a penthouse office, my nights filled with the hum of city lights outside my window. And yet, beneath all of it, there was still that voice in my head, the echo of "You're not good enough." Only now, it didn't haunt me. It fueled me. I thought about Emma sometimes, about the nights I lay broken in bed, replaying her silence. And now, when I caught glimpses of myself in boardrooms, shaking hands with people of influence, I realized I had become the man they swore I'd never be. But life has a cruel way of circling back. Just when I thought I'd moved on completely, they came back into my story, her parents, carrying the weight of desperation, knocking on doors you never thought they'd approach. And it started with the holidays. The last time they called was on Christmas Eve. I was standing in my penthouse, the city glowing beneath me, the scent of pine and cinnamon candles filling the air. My phone buzzed, and Emma's name flashed across the screen. For a second, I almost answered. Almost, but instead, I let it ring until the sound faded into silence. I poured myself a glass of whiskey and sat by the window, watching snowdrift between the skyscrapers. That silence felt different. Now it wasn't heavy with shame or loneliness. It was peace. Years ago, I had begged for their approval, begged to be seen as enough. Tonight, I didn't need their validation. I didn't need Emma's apologies or her parents' sudden change of heart. I thought about the boy I used to be, the one who drove away with tears in his eyes, convinced he'd lost everything. And then I looked around at the life I'd built, brick by brick, fueled by the very words that once tried to destroy me. They had tried to break me, but in the process, they had made me unshakable. People think revenge is about going back, about rubbing success in the faces of those who doubted you. But I learned the real revenge is indifference, knowing you've moved so far beyond them that their opinions no longer matter. Her parents still think about me every holiday, but me, I barely think of them at all. I swirled the glass in my hand, took a slow sip, and whispered to myself, I was always enough. They just couldn't see it. And now, every holiday, I celebrate not with the family that rejected me, but with the one I built, friends who became brothers, a team that became my backbone, and a life that finally feels like mine. That's the ending they'll never accept, but it's the one I chose, and it's the one that sets me free.